Did you always know that David was going to be Martian Manhunter, and how did you go about setting that up?
So we were on the set of the pilot, and we were talking about what we could, just as it happens when you're on the set of the pilot, you start seeing the sets and you start seeing the actors and you start thinking about, well, what we could do next and all the different possibilities that there could be. And we were all of us just so in love with David and so happy to have him on the show, and just loved everything he was doing with Hank and Jeff Johns and Greg Berlanti and I were standing there, and we were saying it's like just collectively amongst us, it's so funny we cast David, because he's got those weird ears, he's got a little bit of alien ears, and they said, it's funny. I mean, I don't remember which one of us said it, but it was like, oh, if we were ever going to make a Martian Manhunter show or something, David would have been the perfect Martian Manhunter, and it was Jeff who said, well, why can't he be? And we looked at each other and we're like, started like, well, wait a minute. And then we started thinking about everything that was happening in the pilot, and the sort of notion that, because we already had the Hank Henshaw idea, sort of set up, that we would be playing this sort of bad secret that he was holding. And then we started thinking about it. It's like, oh, well, wait a minute. What if it's a good secret? What if it's like the reverse of the Flash? What's the reverse of the Reverse Flash? That you think he's bad, but he turns out to not only be good, but literally the most good person in the DC universe. And then we started thinking about, well, what all of Hank's, because originally Hank was going to have obviously a different backstory, like everything he said in the pilot. And we said, oh, actually, if he survived Mars and came here, and his whole goal was to protect Earth and not let Earth suffer the same fate as Mars, well, then he's doing exactly what Kara says and what Astra says, which is not here, never again. And he's got it, he's had to sort of lead this crazy existence pretending to be Hank Henshaw, and he doesn't want Supergirl around. She could mess everything up. And then we're like, oh, it actually all fits. And then we started talking about what the feasibility of it was. First we had to tell David, oh, by the way. And he was so funny, because Allie and I took him out to lunch, and he was like, I'm not going to be Shrek, am I? And that was his biggest fear, and we said no. And we went to Armin, and Armin, when you see him, you're gonna die. I mean, it is so spectacular. I mean, it's just amazing. And then the more we thought about it, everything just sort of flowed from that. And we've got White Martian episodes and Gem, and it's sort of the secret of Supergirl, that within the body of the series of Supergirl, there is a Martian Manhunter series, rolling throughout it. And I don't know. It's the thing that makes us giggle the most, and watching people online, and actually seeing a lot of people now really start to suspect that that's who he is, but in a good way, because everyone who says I think it's who it is, it's always with glee, or I hope, or oh my God, is this really true? It's not like, Jesus, he better not be the Martian Manhunter or I'm done. And that's sort of the toughest part has been convincing David that it's Jean Jones, not John Jones. He's had to re-ADR it a couple of times, but it's been really fun, and it actually so fit in with how Supergirl has been evolving, and how she's somebody who's embraced her powers and stepped out into the light, and in a way, Jean is closeted. And he's afraid, and then he says in an upcoming episode, which I actually just watched last night, when Alex is actually encouraging him to use his powers, he says, she says, what's the difference between you and Kara? And he said, your sister looks like a cheerleader, and I look like a monster. And I really, Jean has always been one of my favorite characters from my childhood, and then through the Justice League cartoon, and just that soulfulness and that sadness, and the one who is the most frightening looking of all the Justice Leaguers, and yet is the one with the purest heart. And then watching this relationship that's growing between him and Alex, and him and Kara, and that started out in a very gruff place, and then by the time you're getting into the meat of the season, they've become this little family unit, and he's become a surrogate father for them, but at the same time they're helping him become more human, and it's just it's sort of one of the great surprises of the show, that for the people who were watching, that like there's this great, like, it's like that old gum where you bit into it and all the juice came out. It was people are still unwrapping it, and they're gonna get the juice. That sounds bad, but
Do you feel free now?
I do. It's been very strange. I haven't told my daughters. I haven't told anybody. So.
When were you told?
I was told about 2 weeks into the job, so I apologize for my Comic-Con answers, because I didn't know anything. I was blagging. They told me about 2 weeks into my time here to start in episode 1. Up until then, I was still unsure. I knew something was changing, but I wasn't absolutely sure what it was, and it was quite uncomfortable. The pilot was quite uncomfortable because I a lot of what Hank said was exposition. This is the DEO, and I'm this, and you're here, and so it was an uncomfortable experience playing Hank in the pilot. So I was really pleased, actually, because Martian Manhunter is such a huge character, and it took me on a whole new, different direction, and it was brilliant for me, because as much as I couldn't really find an angle to play Hank Henshaw that was interesting.
So how did you change your approach to the character once you found out?
The whole idea of suppressing who you are was something that I could understand, and pretending to be, hiding a big secret, that was obviously much more interesting. And I was always also trying to wonder why he was such a bitch to Kara. All the way through the pilot, I was thinking there's something going on here. No one can hate aliens that much. There's something that I don't know. So it was, as I said, that was the other reason why I was happy that it was Martian Manhunter, because he is an alien. So it gave me a direction to take, other than just being, I don't like Kara Zor-El and Superman. That wasn't really that interesting to me.
After his secret is out, how does that affect his relationships with the people who know, or aliens who know?
It's a lot of fun, actually, because as you'll see in the episodes to come, there's a lot of fun to be had in, because he's a shapeshifter, so he can be whoever he wants to be. So I think you'll find me being other members of the cast at some various points of the story. So, but I think particularly with Alex, Kyla, that's been a wonderful relationship to play, because as you'll see in next week's episode, he promised her father that he would protect her like his own child, and having lost his own child, Kara and Alex almost become his children, and he loves them. And again, you'll see that going forward, but they are his children. And I don't know if you know much about the character of Martian Manhunter, but having lost his own children, he's got a lot of pain. There's a lot of pain, a lot of melancholy, which is fantastic to play. It gives you an enormous amount of stuff to play. And I think these two girls represent something that's very, very, very close to him.
His power set is, anything. It transcends like Superman and Supergirl's, but it has a lot of similarities. So will he be taking on that mentor role to her and like using her abilities and powers? Could we see some of that?
There's a little bit of that, yeah. There's a wonderful flight sequence where, and you got to remember that he hasn't used half of these powers for many years, because he's been reforming the DEO and pretending to be somebody else. So I think the revelation is as much a kind of weight off his shoulders than anything. It's the fact that he can finally be himself, and I think that's also at times very uncomfortable for him, because he realizes, Kara's, beautiful, attractive, and blonde and gorgeous, and I'm this 7-foot green Martian. And as much as I want to just be myself, it would terrify people.